Welcome to the Social Media Church podcast. I'm Nils Smith, and I'm joined by my guest and good friend and all of our good friend, Jay Kranda. Jay, welcome back to the podcast.
I know. I not too long since I've been on, but we got some stuff to share. And so I know I was like, please, Nils, let me back on the podcast. Please.
Yes. And I said, Jay, let me think about it. I'm going to pray about it.
You pointed out your ratings have been really good since I've been off. So there's no way, clearly, if I come back on, it's like the effector. So
yes. So this is actually the true measure of how much Jay affects the podcast. So I will be measuring closely this podcast and to see how people respond. Jay, I've missed you on the podcast, and I expect being about the same gap between every visit. I expect you on every fourth podcast or so moving forward. So I'm going to hold you to that. So you might not be my official co-host anymore, but I'm going to nag you as much as I possibly can to be on the podcast as much as possible. I appreciate all the guests, and it has been fun to do more interviews, but I've missed the conversations. You and I have not been. We've probably had even more conversations not doing the podcast together than we have doing the podcast together. So for those that think that we hate each other, we don't. We love each other. We see each other and talk to each other regularly.
I just want to be close enough to be a part of the success and far enough to also be not part of the failures. So, I have, that's strategic. But hey, we're here. I mean, one of the reasons we wanted to get together because we had some exciting news, and I was like, I think the Social Media Church audience might be the perfect audience to share that with.
Yeah. Well, and this audience has followed our journey with Social Media Church and beyond Social Media Church. As you and I, we've shared this story a number of times, but I'll share it again because we have a growing audience. A lot of people that aren't familiar with our whole story is we've been friends for a long time. We met probably 6 years ago now, when I was doing the online campus at CBC, and we were just kind of growing from each other. You took me out, eat some fish tacos. We became friends. And then like 3 years ago, maybe, or 2 years ago, I don't know how long ago it was, we were having coffee in Southern California. We were both saying, man, we spent a lot of money on a TV app. We feel like this technology is going to be a big deal. We need to make it affordable for churches. We started a company together. We got a development team, a designer together, wanted to create great, affordable technology for churches. We've done that. We're seeing great response to it. And then I would say out of that, we have an exciting offering that takes this to a whole nother level. Our excitement level is to another level. And this is why we've been talking a lot lately. So Jay, I'm going to let you share the exciting and the big news around what's next for TvApp.Church.
So the big news is that we're offering a way for any ministry of any size to get a free Alexa app, or Alexa skill would be the official. They're not called apps, they're called skills. And so Alexa is the voice operating system on Amazon devices. It's on Echo, the Dot, and also Amazon Fire TV and the Kindles. You can get a custom skill for your ministry. And all you need is a existing podcast RSS feed. You get an RSS feed, we plug in your podcast as a skill. And the way it would work is you would say, and for you, if you want to try it out, what your custom skill would be like, download the Social Media Church Alexa skill. And you would say, Alexa, play the latest message from Social Media Church, or play the latest message from your church. And so we talked about it in a great deal as a company, figuring out pricing and so forth. And we started testing it out. And one thing that we've always wanted to do is provide a way for to really be a champion to churches. And we thought, what a way to really help churches think about the future than offering a free way to get a custom Alexa skill. And so you do it by going to TvApp.Church. And you can go to /Alexa and you could sign up and get on the wait list on getting your app, your custom skill set up. So that is the news.
All right. Exciting news. I'm going to pry a little bit, Jay, and I know the answers, but for our listeners, I'm going to ask some questions here. First question that I think everybody's naturally going to think is, what's the catch? Is it really free? Here's what I get excited about, though, Jay, before I even let you answer the question, is when we brainstormed about TV apps, Echo. An Echo device did not even yet exist at that point. I remember I ordered the Echo device the day it was offered. I got it. I was probably one of the first people to ever get an Echo early on. And I remember thinking, man, this is the coolest thing. And then now they're everywhere. You see them everywhere. But when we built the TV app company, Alexa wasn't even on our radar. It wasn't even a thing. So technology has changed. We also said we want to build something affordable. I don't think either one of us ever thought we want to create free technology for the church. I think that when people hear free, they assume there's a catch. And so, Jay, what's the catch?
Well, there is no catch there in the sense that you don't need to put in a credit card. There's no, requirement for future payment. Our hope ultimately is that you like it so much that you want to get TV apps that you'll want to get on Amazon, Fire, and Roku, and Apple TV. But if you never decide to do that, then there is no issue. And so, so there is no catch. There is no trick. There isn't like you got to, fill out this thing in order to get this, and we're going to spam you kind of thing. No, it's just, we want to offer away. And our hope is that you like it so much, you tell other ministries about it. And through that, we, ultimately, we will grow our awareness as a company, but we're also going to provide a really cool resource for many ministries. And I know that one of the hardest things about new technology is just getting people used to it and using it. And if you can just get them, I was just talking to somebody that I work with about using Canva, an online photo, editing software. And we were trying to get somebody else to use it. And there was a little bit of lag because it was just a new thing. Mm-hmm. And this person who was trying to train this other person, who I had trained the first person, was saying I know it was uncomfortable and I'm trying to get them used to it. And the funny thing was, when I first trained this person, they felt uncomfortable. Yep. And now they're just so used to it. And so this is what we want to do with Alexa and voice type of apps like this, is we just want people to start thinking about this technology and integrating it into their church strategy. And we really believe that it'll just make the church overall just better.
Yeah. I'm so excited about this. You're so excited about this. I've been so excited to sell CV Outreach, which is free, cvoutreach.com. For a couple, maybe a year and a half now. And I'm hearing now that they've got hundreds of churches using that. And a lot of times churches were like, there's got to be a catch. And there's no, they genuinely want to help reach people with Google Grants and do it for churches. And this is the same thing. There are 10,000 skills now in the Alexa store that's growing every day. I would love to see 20,000 skills, and half of those being ministries putting their audio, feeds out into Alexa land. So that's really our core heart. Now, we do hope from a business standpoint that people will buy some of our other services, but we built a system, and I say our development team built a system that can so easily ingest this and distribute it, that we want churches to get in on this quickly and to overload the Alexa skill store with church feeds. And what we also know is that when you go to the podcast store in iTunes, the number one thing is the religion section. And so churches have been creating audio content for years, distributing it through iTunes. You could take that exact same feed and distribute it to Alexa, and it costs you nothing. And this is a great new channel. I mean, I don't know how many devices it is now, but with Amazon Prime Day recently, Alexa is everywhere, and there are Echo devices that have the little puck now that, I think we have 3 Alexa devices in our one apartment. It's everywhere. And, my kids love it. My wife loves it. I listen to it. Now, it was always with music. I was just talking to a friend the other day, and I was telling him about this. And he was like, I was just thinking the other day, all I listen to is music. It'd be cool if you could do sermons to this. I'm like, well, it's funny you say that, because we are now making that accessible. It's pretty exciting. So go get your Alexa skill. Jay, I want to brainstorm around this. And we did this as we launched the TV app, is what are some opportunities with audio that people can do? So one of the things that happen with TV apps and that we've seen is people naturally put sermons on TV apps, But then we started kind of communicating. You really pushed this. Think about small groups. Think about small group curriculum. Think about stories. Think about other content that is really engaging on a TV platform. And we're seeing more and more churches beginning to create and ministries create content outside of the weekend message. Now, there's nothing wrong with, and I think you should be putting that on a TV from a video perspective. Audio, there's no reason you shouldn't record your sermons and put them on iTunes and distribute those out and create that opportunity in Alexa. But there are other opportunities as well. Jay, what are your thoughts around audio and this massive trend that's developing on audio?
Yeah, I mean, obviously with audio, I think one of the number one things that is the benefit is that it doesn't take a lot of bandwidth for it. And then also it's something that's easy to do while you're multitasking. So I think generally it's very seamless. I've been somebody that's always, I listen to, probably a good, 200, 300 hours worth of audiobooks every year. I listen to, double the amount of podcasts every year. And so it's something that you can do while you're doing other things. So I listen while I'm working. I'm listening while I'm, if I go running. And so it's something that it's very seamless. And so with ministries, thinking about what's the content that can you integrate that people can do while you are, while they are doing other things. And because you got to think about it, there's a lot of places where they might not be able to have a full video up. It's think about a workplace. They might not be able to be watching a video, but what they could do is they could be listening. And then bandwidth, we just, at Saddleback, we just introduced to our online campus an audio only feed on our online campus page. And one of the main reasons we did that was because of bandwidth internationally, allowing people, and then on iOS devices, if you are listening to video and you exit out of our mobile page, it will immediately stop playing the service. But if you're listening to the audio and exit out, it allows the sermon to continue if you're listening to audio. And that's because iOS has this strict restrictive part of the development access that audio you can access when on the page, and video you have to be literally looking at it for it to continue on. And so I think it's just a seamless, and I think for ministries, there's no reason to not have your sermons and content up. I think having on-demand training, I took a HubSpot certification course on a podcast account. It was like they set this up years ago. It's actually not something that they do anymore, but one of their first certification courses for inbound was just a podcast course. And so if you're a youth ministry and you're wanting, maybe you do your volunteer training as audio, you do your 10 parts to become a volunteer. Hey, listen to it while you're working out or running or whatever, you know what I mean? And so it's the same, and you can access it. And so you set it up as a podcast on iTunes, you put it up on SoundCloud, and then you also have it up on Alexa. And, the idea it's integrated. And so I think there's so many opportunities, but think about bandwidth and also multitasking. It's kind of a perfect platform.
It's amazing. What's possible now. You and I were chatting before this podcast, and my first podcast I started listening to was probably 9 years ago, now that I think about it. And it was the Simply Youth Ministry podcast with Doug Fields. And back then I didn't have a smartphone. There was no smartphone. I'd listened to it on my computer, in the office. Yeah. And then I would say I kind of moved away from podcast a little bit for a season. And then when I moved to New York and I had the subway, I couldn't listen to anything. I couldn't stream, I couldn't do Spotify or some of the other things. And so I got back into podcasts because I could download them and kind of listen on the go. And then the serial podcast really made podcasting take off. And I think what's happened, and you turned me on to the startup podcast too, that was so fun to listen to, is the quality of podcasts has really increased in certain podcasts. But I would say that even there's a mix. I look at, in the religion section, Rob Bell's podcast is one of those popular ones. It's not real edited. It's basically him and a microphone, and he just starts talking whenever he feels like it. There's not a whole lot of format there. And he has over 1 million downloads a month on that podcast. It is amazing what's possible without a ton of work. You can get a $50 microphone, get good quality audio, and you can be creating a podcast and Libsyn costs like $6 a month, to host that podcast and distribute it. It isn't that expensive. It's not that complicated. And it's not like video takes a lot of work to capture, to edit, to all of those things. Podcasting, even with GarageBand, you could do some editing, but you almost don't even have to. Like we've learned with this podcast, we've kind of gone to where it's like no editing. It just is like straight audio. We just hit start and hit stop on Zoom in the audio file, and we upload it, and I think there's I want to improve the quality. And that's one of the things as I move into 2018, as I'm thinking through where I want to go with this podcast. I do want to improve the quality, but it doesn't mean I don't want to stop doing this until I improve quality. I'm so glad that for 4 years we've run this podcast and we've looked at different ways to improve it. I think people can now start a podcast. They can distribute a podcast. But here's the difference in what's happening now with Alexa is podcasting. We know the smartphone changed so much. Our smartphone can now more accessibly connect to our car, which is making podcasting a big part of our commute. We can listen to a podcast through headphones when we're exercising or doing certain things. But I think what's happening now with Alexa that I get excited about is, so audio is about a passive listening experience. So video, you need to have your eyes and your ears engaged. Audio, you can be driving, you can be doing different things. Well, now I think Alexa gives us the opportunity as you're getting ready. And so as I think about somebody getting ready in the morning, it takes me about 5 minutes, takes my wife about a little bit longer. I won't go into how long it takes her in comparison to me, but it gives you that time while you're getting ready. And so we have the Amazon device that moves around, but you think about even a sermon, play a sermon while you're getting ready, play a podcast while you're getting ready in the morning. So now you have the 20-minute commute, the 45 minutes of getting ready, the 30 minutes while somebody's doing dishes. You have a lot of time that people could be listening to podcasts. So I often say it's the Netflix, what Netflix was to TV, and it became basically on-demand TV. You choose what you listen to, when you listen to it, what you watch when you watch. Podcasting is kind of the same thing of podcasting. What Netflix is to TV, I consider podcasting is to AM radio. So what kind of Spotify was to FM radio. So it kind of gives you, it gives you that ability to listen to download and then listen when you want, what you want, how you want. And I think Alexa just brings that to one more device to make those podcasts that you become a regular listen to more accessible. So from a distribution standpoint, there are so many ways that people can consume, where in the past it was like you download it on your computer and you listen to it at your desk.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. And we keep saying, and even if you visit the TVApp.com/Alexa, you'll see it. We talk about providing fluid experiences for your members, so that they're, it's no longer about one device. It's about how many devices. And, we can't all be on everything, but there's a lot of opportunities. And the key is it's not just about being on the devices, but providing an experience that is worth it. And that's something we've learned with some of the mobile apps now, is you have to have a pretty robust, there's a high standard for mobile apps for you not to use the browser, your mobile browser versus app. There has to be a high experience. But for TV apps and for a skill, a lot of people don't even know how to use them, and they want a committed channel. And so there's a huge value. And so, but fluid experiences, and platforms speak people's love language. It's just like Mac and Android. Are you on Alexa? Are you on this? And so it speaks to who you're going after. And I think that's one thing we come back to, even with, what's the value of getting on Alexa? I said, it really speaks to who are you going after? And are you thinking about the future? And so part of that is experimenting and going. And anyway, so that's, we're really excited about it. And we can't wait to, your ministry, whoever you are listening to this, tries it out.
Yeah. So I want to talk about two more things, Jay, as we kind of bring this to reality, as we just talked through the trend of, and our friend, he's not really our friend, but our kind of social media hero, Gary Vaynerchuk, is very hot on audio right now, where he's just saying, if you have two platforms that you should build, it should be your podcast and your vlog. And we've talked about on this podcast quite a bit, vlogging, and Sean Cannell was recently on. Soon, I've got an interview I've already recorded with that Christian vlogger that I can't wait for everybody to listen in on. And so vlogging is a big opportunity. I think podcasting is also a big opportunity. I want you to maybe speak to some ideas, because I think you shouldn't just have your sermon podcast. I think you can have your Talk It Over podcast. I think you could have your women's ministry podcast. I think you have a youth ministry podcast. I think a church could have 12 podcasts. I don't think that'd be a bad thing. And honestly, it wouldn't be that expensive. So Jay, I'd love to get your ideas just creatively around that. I want to just give some numbers because I don't want to share client numbers, but every client I have that has a podcast, it is growing tremendously right now because this trend is growing. And Jay, since you quit this podcast, I'm kidding. But here's our numbers. These are actual numbers of the Social Media Church podcast. This is a 4-year-old podcast where, Jay, we saw steady growth throughout our time doing the podcast together, and we saw it double over a year and a half that we did it together, from about 2,000 to 4,000. But here's the last 4 months. In May, we had just under 4,000 downloads. In June, we had just under 5,000 downloads. In July, we had 6,444 downloads. In August, we still have 2 more days left in August. We've got 7,468 downloads. We will possibly pass 8,000 downloads this month. We have almost doubled in 4 months. That the growth right now, and Jay, that has nothing to do with you or with me. That has everything, in my mind, to do with the growth of audio. And so while video, there's no doubt video is also growing, and we've been all about video, we got on a trend here, and this trend is probably only going to continue to grow. And a lot of that has to do with Alexa and this growth technology. So I wanted to get real numbers to that. That doesn't mean your church podcast is going to grow at the same rate, but I'm seeing similar numbers. I'm actually seeing bigger numbers with a lot of our clients. Podcasting is a growing trend, and audio is a big deal. Creative ideas, Jay, around what kind of audio churches could be creating outside of the sermons?
Yeah, I think outside of the sermons, I think like some kind of discussion material that is based off your weekend message for small groups or your cell groups or house groups type of thing. So, maybe you do like a short description of what the weekend is about. And then you say, here are 5 questions to ask in your group. And you could even do like, pause this now and talk about it. So it's kind of like an interactive type of, conversation for group material.
Maybe even for the leader, speak into the leader a little bit. This is our leadership training as we're all on the same page. I want to give you this direction as you lead your small group this week. I love that. Yeah.
I think, types of studies, like we have a podcast that one of our pastors does, Drive Time Devotions, which is, I think has been downloaded over 10 million times. It's something crazy. Wow. It's huge. And Pastor Tom goes through books of the Bible, and it's, you could listen to it as a podcast. You could just listen. And the idea is originally it was called Drive Time because you would listen to it on your drive to work.
Yep.
And you could go through Romans over a course of, 30 weeks and just listen to a short description, but doing something like that. I think like types of leadership lifter thoughts, maybe you do a weekly or a regular like thought where you just, encourage your volunteers. Any type of training could be hosted. I mean, those are some of the initial, there's what's the ministry? Oh man, I'm forgetting the name of the church right now, but they do the Debrief podcast. They're out in Riverside. But they do a great podcast where they pretty much, it's just about debriefing the weekend. And I think it's a great application. There's a lot of people doing that in Facebook Live type post. Yep. Now it's like, okay, hey, it's what it is. It's geared to not forget about what was talked about and don't forget to apply it. And so they take the message and they continue on. But those are some of the ideas that I would say right off the bat, like it could really help.
Yeah, I love that. And even, you can launch a podcast and it can be, just like cereal, they launch it in seasons. And so that doesn't mean you have to do it every week. You could record 10 and launch it over a 10-week period. And then you just wait for, and you just do it over the summer, or, we're going to wait till the fall and
Yeah.
we're going to relaunch season 2. There are so many ideas around podcast. I think it's important to go listen to some other podcasts, get some ideas, but don't be limited to your Sunday sermons. I would say too, if you're a church that says, we really can't capture the sermons very easily, one, I would question that, because I think it's easier than you think to capture the sermons. But I think it's even better, though, is re-preach the sermons into a Blue Yeti microphone on Monday directly into your computer, record that, upload it right to iTunes, and distribute out that. You're probably going to get better audio. You're going to speak directly to that audience and engage in a really creative and unique way. And maybe it's a little shorter. Maybe you really focus that, a good, a lot of times they say a podcast should be about 20 minutes. I listen to some that are an hour and 20 minutes, but because an average drive time is 22 minutes. I love that drive time devotional. Create a daily devotional on podcast through audio for your congregation. It's genius. We have just created one more way to distribute that podcast. I hope churches will get really creative with audio content. So go to TVApp.Church. Go get your free Alexa skill today. Go get 7 free Alexa skills for your church today, because you're creating 7 new podcasts. So every podcast can be its own skill. To test our podcast, Social Media Church, if you haven't already downloaded it, just tell your Alexa, enable Social Media Church, and then Alexa, tell Social Media Church to play the latest message. And as you do that, you will hear how our podcast works. And how our Alexa skill works. It's so simple. It's so easy. You don't have to go download anything. You just have to tell Alexa, enable Social Media Church, and play the latest message. It's really that easy. Your church can have an Alexa skill that easily. Jay, any other thoughts as we wrap up this podcast?
No, I just want to get your skills set up. That's all I want.
That's it. It's that easy. No catch. Free Alexa skill. Thanks so much for listening. If you have any questions about this, use the hashtag SMC podcast. If you have any ideas of a podcast or even some favorite podcasts, use the hashtag SMC podcast. We want to hear about some of your favorite podcasts, some of your ideas. This is a huge, huge new opportunity for churches. We're excited to be in the middle of it. We're excited that so many new people are listening to this podcast and engaged in this conversation and using this medium. We hope that your church will also engage further in this medium and get really creative. So thanks for listening to this podcast.